Overrated, probably the buzzwords of consistency, accessibility, efficiencies, that they're not what a design system can guarantee, or even help if the UX maturity is low in the company, or if there is no UX strategy. I would say probably the thing that many companies might do wrong is to think that they need to build just a button as a first component because that's the most used. The whole process of selling the design system to leadership and get adoption took some time. Also because the design system team was located inside one of the departments and inside like a squad for a long time. And initially, like the adoption was slow because basically the teams got this library and they were supposed to start working with it.
Hello, welcome to the new episode of Design System Guide podcast. And today I have with me Robin. Robin works at Swisscom, which is a pretty large company in Switzerland, as the name tells us. They have 19,000 employees and actually 60 designers spread across multiple teams and departments. And welcome, Robin. How are you?
All good. Thank you, Romina, for having me. It's a pleasure.
So we can start with design system team. Maybe you can tell us a bit how big is it, and what drove your company Swisscom decision to implement a design system and where it started. We need a little bit of history.
Sure. Well, at the moment is bigger than it was in the past. For a long time, it was like 2 people, then 3 people with some help from some part-time employees that helped. But currently, it's 6 full-time and 2 interns. So we have like 3 developers and 1 designer, me, like 1 intern, and then we have like a PO and a Scrum Master as well. Because at the moment we are inside like a squad that is built with the safe scaled agile framework environment construct. So we have also like a PO and a Scrum Master as well.
So how does this work? I mean, if you have a Scrum Master, so they probably put you into sprints and connect you with the product teams.
Yeah, that is actually quite recent. Before, like, because the team went through some changes through the years. Like at the moment, in the past, we were more like centralized and free floating, let's say. Then we tried to follow closely the PI rhythm of some teams, because in order to give them a bit of transparency on what would be released in the current PI, and now it's more like transformed into like a squad, like a delivery team, where basically the Scrum Master and the PO have they do like a PI planning, and they have like 2 weeks sprints that they plan. I would say the sprints are not like so they're planned, but like we don't expect to finish necessarily every story inside a sprint like you would ideally do. It's more the idea of like having an idea of what gets built in the current PI.
Mm-hmm. But maybe we went too far directly into sprints. Maybe you should tell us what is Swisscom, because probably people worldwide would not know that you offer so many stuff and that you're spread across multiple departments and also startups inside Swisscom.
So yeah, basically Swisscom is, for those who don't know, is the biggest telecommunication company in Switzerland. It's quite big. It offers like a wide range of products and services. And maybe if I can start from like how the design system got built in the company. We of course have like a brand department.
Mhm.
So the design system basically came as a brand initiative. So in 2016 they launched the design system, which at the time was still called like a style guide. Initially, it was a sketch component library, and components were built with like simple HTML. Um, an agency was tasked to do this job, and they documented the whole library via Frontify. So and initially, like the adoption was slow because basically the teams got this library and they were supposed to start working with it. Some teams then were working in Angular, which made the HTML components difficult to use. So after a while, there was a small, like a grassroots movement, let's say. Two people took the library and transitioned it to web components, as well as crafting a custom website for the documentation. At that time, the company was still using the word style guide, probably because coming from brand has style guides for non-digital products, and um, and so my predecessor initially was hired as a UX lead. She joined the design system team and she improved a lot of the UX because a lot of the old components got reworked, transitioned, and adapted to the real use cases. And at the time, basically, I was helping as a contributor for the Sketch library. So during that time, when I contributed, she was basically mentoring me for a couple of years before she left in 2021, when I was then promoted as promoted to her role as a UX lead.
Mhm.
And yeah, so during that time, maybe still talking about like how the design system took hold and took like some years to get the adoption. At that time, when she started working on the design system together with a team lead and a tech lead, we were also lucky to have a head of design, and he understood the importance of having like a centralized, independent team for the design system. And at that point, he also mandated the other designers to use the system, because at that time we had a bit of a strange constellation where we had like teams using Sketch, some teams were using Axure, some rogue designers were using Adobe XD. So at that point, it was decided to use one tool, Figma, and transition the library that previously was in Sketch to Figma. And yeah, I was part of that transition, of course, at that time. And then, yeah, I was interested in the topic of design systems, so I started like reading articles and books about design systems, and pushed the term in the company during meetings, during presentation, and we also at some point crafted new design principles. So I made sure to use the wording design system as well in the design principle. And now, yeah, thanks to the effort of the team, the company uses the term design system more widely. And
So what do you think were the key challenges when you coming from 2016, having Sketch library, and now to today?
yeah, so the key challenges, one of the key challenges was that these guidelines suddenly appeared, and this external agency had like no deep understanding about the real use cases that the teams across the org were facing. Um, we have like many teams and they work in different departments. At that point, there was also no centralized team uh, who took care of like the governance process or the adoption strategy. And maybe more importantly, there was like no understanding from the PMs and the designers about what a design system was. So it was often, and still is sometimes, confused with like a component library. Most people thought they had to sometimes use only the colors and the typography, and that's it, like kind of like a brand style guide. So the whole process of selling the design system to leadership and get adoption took some time. Also because the design system team was located inside one of the departments and inside like a squad for a long time. So that definitely made it harder to work on something like transversal, like a design system.
Mhm. So you mentioned two people that took design system to web components, but in that time you already had the leadership support, or this was just like, okay, we will do it to show you that this is needed.
Yeah, there was more. There was support with the idea, but it was still heavily grassroots. And yeah, I have to give props to the team members that they took the library and started like pushing it first in their team, and then like I said, once we got the head of design, then he went a step further and tried to involve like other teams and align the designers in using it. Of course, using the same tool helped a lot because, as you can imagine, like at that time where we had different design tools was even crazier. People were building twice the things that were built in Sketch. Yeah,
So part of the new design system was also probably a lot of education about Figma and how to use Figma and why to use Figma.
yeah, yeah. And I think the switch to the tool, because then everybody had to change the tool, probably like helped as well. Like this idea of sharing files, components, patterns, because everybody had access to the files of other people.
So now this is like a, let's say, white label UI kit that everyone starts with, even if they are in different departments. You share some kind of guidelines how to start with all the components that you already built.
Yes, yes. Yeah, and for that we have we document the design system on a dedicated website. Yeah, the component library is built in Figma, and yeah, we offer like some rituals where people can reach out, ask for support if they have questions on the design system, and yeah, slowly like more and more teams then started adopting the system.
Mm. So
But of course, it was heavier use in the team where the design system team also was. So in terms of the organization.
mm, what do most companies get wrong about design system in their first year, from your perspective?
I would say probably the thing that many companies might do wrong is to think that they need to build just a button as a first component because that's the most used. Tim Danmall talks about this in one of his in his latest book, that you should probably look at what component is the most needed at the time, and if you're experienced as a team, you can tackle maybe the hardest component that is needed at the time, and maybe even a step back before that. One thing that probably is even better to do in case you already have a product is to do an audit. So if you do an audit of your digital products, you might spot current patterns and components. And I would also say, on top of that, you might start by educating leadership and teams about what a design system is, and set the expectations and come up with an adoption strategy. Maybe that would be a better start than starting to just build a button because you say, well, we all have buttons and everybody will use them. So setting the expectations and educating leadership about what it is, I think that as a first step might be more beneficial.
But in your case, the first task, I mean, I agree that design audit is needed and too many times forgotten. But in your case, it's even harder because, as we mentioned, you have so many different companies inside one company. So how does this look like? Did you do the design audit for all of 19, departments? You decided to go with the most common components. Um, how was this process
So
like? Did you had workshops?
So that is a thing that did not happen because of the external agency that took over this project. They focused. I mean, of course, they looked at what the company had, focused a lot on the B2C department for what they were building. But yeah, that was definitely something that was missing. So what happened afterwards is that we had this design system, this like bunch of components, and most of them have been now replaced and updated through feedbacks from the teams, through auditing what we have, noticing what are common patterns across the different applications. Of course, the company is very big, and builds a lot of software, both internal and external, customer facing, B2C, B2B. Um, so it's extremely hard to run an audit across all the teams, because also Swisscom is quite like a big pre-internet era company. And so there is still like a lot of silos in the company that work on their projects. So it was more of a iterative approach, where basically we try to pull in teams to to um, to basically give us input on what are they working on, where can they use the system, where doesn't work, and then we tried like that to iterate on the system. But the reason is because the audit didn't happen. So that is something that happened then organically through the years. Like I said, we launched the system was launched in 2016, so there was still like many years of iteration, trying to involve the other teams as well.
Mm. What would you say it's special in Swisscom and your process?
Yeah, so like I said, Swisscom is big pre-internet era company. So the company is involved in many industries and verticals, has many departments and teams, involved in all sorts of services, technologies, and the processes in the company, at least for the digital teams, follow in many cases the SAFe model, so this scaled agile framework environment. And this involves already many issues itself, because it's a bit of like this fake agile methodology, and Marty Kagan talks about this, and this will be like a whole other podcast if we want to go down the road. Um, but yeah, it produces a lot of processes, and it's still very silo based. Also, being like the number one telco, it made it sort of like the company is very sales and marketing driven rather than product driven. And there is like a very nice interview of Steve Jobs where he talks about this phenomena when companies become leaders in a certain market, and you tend to have sales and marketing people driving the decisions of the company. And so what often happens, you have like product people being like driven out of the decision making forums, and that is something that definitely saw happening. And this makes it challenging to work on transversal topics like design systems, but also stuff like user journeys and omni-channel strategies, because there is this silo-based waterfall approach on how projects are done. And also that there is like a bit of a lack of UX strategy at leadership level. For example, we don't have like a head of design anymore, like no design director or no UX researchers. So this drives also a bit the UX maturity in the company, which is a bit low, since during the hiring process, you tend to have business people hiring graphic designers rather than product designers. And this makes the adoptions quite hard, because design systems are a new way of working, and it's very difficult because graphic designers are used to draw UIs for their PMs rather than building software that delivers outcomes, innovates, and solves problems. So this leads also to frequent reorgs, and a lot of redesigns, which makes it quite hard to like iterate on data and improve the experience. So what happens is that the design system team like often was involved in these redesigns and supporting the teams to deliver the redesigns sometimes. And yeah, this was a challenge that we tackled by trying also to start with one of our departments, our B2B departments, to build like specific libraries, so connected to the core library, but owned by a certain department. And that started working quite well. Now our B2C department is also catching up with like the idea that not everything has to go in the core system, but that teams can actually work on a separate library and extend it when they do have to work on things that are specific, or they have like a certain deadline, or there is a certain redesign. But yeah, like in summary, there is a lot of variety of products, and the design system team has always tried to standardize the most used components and patterns. But yeah, there is still there is still a way to for every team to learn how to use with building the systems. And yeah, until also UX becomes like more embedded rather than simply being spot UX. So that is definitely like one of the challenges working in such a big organization that has this variety of products and this type of structure with the processes. And yeah, I think it might be common with a lot of companies in Europe. Like I talked to a lot of people from the US, and I think their things run a bit differently. In Europe, we are very focused on processes in big companies, especially when they're not tech driven companies. So that definitely makes it challenging to work on cross functional. But yeah, that is what definitely specific to the company.
Yeah, I would say I have similar experiences with bigger companies, you know. It's a company that has history, and of course, there were no sprints in, I don't know, 20 years ago or 10 years ago.
Mhm.
And they didn't focus on this too much. And also, I would say from what you just shared, that maybe because you're doing a lot of startups inside the company, that part of it it's probably move fast and break things just to see if there's a product market fit. So design system most of the times is probably like a starter kit, you know, that you can start
Yeah,
building and then come back and reiterate and maybe add new branding and stuff.
exactly. Yeah. But that's where I think maybe like a holistic UX strategy in the company would help, like differentiating when do you go fast and break things, when do you want like an omni-channel experience, when do you want to have like consistent journeys, which products need to be aligned, which maybe need to not be aligned because they are too specific or too say, special or so.
Would you say that that customer facing have more attention than those that are B2B and maybe are internal?
For sure, customer facing has more attention. Definitely everything that is publicly reachable, not internal. But yeah, that is also why the design system team was always located inside the B2C department, because a lot of the attention there was on the main homepage and residential customers. But there has been also a big focus on the B2B side to use the system. But in their case was more to try to align the plethora of apps that they have built for the customers. So in order to have that they actually their department actually mandated the design system team in a way that other departments didn't. For them was more of a need to align the family of applications they have, because they have really a lot. And yeah, the development resources, of course, benefit from that alignment.
Mhm. How are then Figma file structures? Do you have one library that's available for everyone? And can these teams also give back their library or maybe new components?
So the way we structure, we have two Figma files, like foundation and components, split in two, but they're part of we see them as part of the same library. Um, Teams that work on like specific components or on their own library, they usually build their own file structure. But that is when also sometimes happens that either they propose one of those components to be included in the design system. That's where then we have discussions on promoting a certain component to the core library, or changing one of our components to fit their needs. And contribution, if they it's usually if they want to contribute to a component, we have always been open to. Has always been hard for them to find time and resources to do it, because it's not just that copy pasting the Figma component in the core file. So, but that has happened. Like some teams decided to contribute a component, either design or code or both. So, but that is a process that where we have like rituals and a process to discuss it and then include it in the library.
Mhm. Do you use some kind of documentation tool or third-party tool where you document all the stuff or everything's in Figma?
Um, Documentation, we have our own website. It's built like custom built, and yeah, that is basically the platform where we document all the components. We give guidelines for designers and developers, accessibility guidelines as well, and in Figma, um, I created like a documentation file, I call it, with like snippets of cool examples that people have been using, or that we used to test some components. But mostly, yeah, most documentation is on our dedicated website,
Nice.
and that is public, so it's open to both internal designers as well as agencies, because we do have also agencies that are involved in some projects,
Mm.
and so they need to be able to access the documentation as well.
So what's your process for gathering feedback from developers and designers using the system? Do you have some kind of special rituals? How can they inform you about all the mistakes
Yeah,
that are possible?
so we do have different channels. So we do have every year, 2 years, like a form questionnaires that we started sending to our consumers, where we ask questions about the system, to get together like more generic feedback, overall feedback about the system and the processes. Otherwise, we have a very active Teams channel. We use Microsoft Teams for internal communication. That is where people can quickly get a feedback on some problems, if they're working on. Otherwise, we have a weekly office hour. That is basically a time, classic office hours. People can come in and propose, or present a problem they have, and that is then discussed in these office hours. And there we basically take that input and discuss it, and maybe create a story about it. Otherwise, email, of course, we have support email that people can use. Otherwise, from designers, oftentimes Figma comments, of course, directly in the library. That is more like for like bugs, or questions on a Figma component. Yeah, those are, would say, usually the the channels we have for people to reach out.
So weekly office hours is for everyone to join, not just for designers.
Yes, yes. It's mostly used for design. It's open to everybody that has a question, but oftentimes it's mostly designers that bring those topics. Also from developers. Developers tend to use more the Teams channel, and designers like to come and engage more in the office hours. I don't know if that says about, like, the introversion of programmers, that they rather write you a message in Teams than coming in a call. I mean, of course, it's a time question, but yeah, it's open for everybody. But yeah,
So what's the process, for example, when you want to rebuild a component or you get the feedback that it needs to be rebuilt?
yeah. So we have this like a weekly meeting. That's where new component or changes to a component proposal get reviewed together with developers, and then and other designers are as well there. And if it's decided that we need to add or change a component, then we just add it to the backlog, prioritize it, and then the component is updated both in Figma and code. Documentation is updated, and once we have the release, the release generates email for all the subscribers, plus a Teams post in the channel, so people are aware, if they follow those channels, that there is an update, and then basically they are asked to switch to update the version of the design system and get the update.
Mhm. What trick do you use for deprecated components in Figma?
So yeah, deprecation Figma is always annoying. It uh, we experiment with different approaches. So usually, if because if the structure completely changes in Figma, you kind of have to do a new component. There are some updates that you can just get out and know without like painless updates. But in Figma, as soon as you change the structure of the component, you rather make a duplicate of your component and work on that in order to not break existing visuals. So what I do usually is I duplicate components. I do the changes to the component to fit the new requirements. Basically, the old component initially we did not delete it, and we wrote like a deprecated string inside the name for people to see that it's deprecated, but realized that at some point we started having a lot of deprecated component inside the file. And that didn't help anybody. It was making the file bloated. One thing I do now is I basically delete the old version. That means designers in Figma will see that the component they have is not attached anymore to a component. They will still get the deprecated naming in the string, but it's a bit of an annoying process because designers have to notice that the component is deprecated. And once it is, switching it all over, it's a bit of a painful process. So usually people, what they do is for the old visuals, they might not update it, or if they need a new component, then they switch the instances.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. This could be AI, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that would be, but it's just the way Figma does. It doesn't allow like a nice deprecation. It's also true that it depends really what the old component and the new component have in common and what they don't. Because that makes it so that it's not necessarily that easy to merge the new changes with the old ones.
Yeah, and how often do you use it? For example, if it's a bug or input filter, then it's a lot of work to go back and also change it in the old file.
Yeah, but that's AI stuff. That's for sure. One thing I hope someone will work on.
Yeah. So are there any other tools that you also use besides Figma and having a custom documentation?
I mean, our web components, they are built using Stencil, and we use Jira for our backlog and Teams for our communication. So yeah, those are mainly the tools we use for our work.
Do you also have the connection with Jira to Slack and Figma, and you see all the updates there?
No, we don't have that. With the plugin.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was the idea. I thought there was a plugin. We have because it's a very big company. Our security standards and departments and people also are very. It's very hard to get these kind of things connected sometimes because of security issues. So in the end, we didn't use the connection with Jira.
Mm-hmm. So how do you collaborate on design system with product teams? Probably.
Yeah. So
you mentioned that there's a lot of product teams and a lot of silos.
Yeah. So like I said, we provide this office hour for teams to reach out, where they can come in and ask questions, bring new ideas, new topics, plus the other channels I mentioned before. We also offer compliance checks. We have some teams, actually many teams, that might not have a designer, so it's like delivery teams with just developers, where they might want to have feedback or compliance checks on what they build, as well as for external agencies. We sometimes have meetings with them where we onboard them on the design systems. So that is basically the main way we communicate. We allow people to come in and bring their own problems or ideas on the different channels.
So what's a compliance check? Do you have a checklist before you actually give it to compliance team? What's the process like?
It's more of a review of what has been built. So to see if the components they use were used like correctly from design system perspective. if they maybe build some specific component that might have been that where maybe a component that is present in the core library could have fit. Um, if it's if the guidelines are respected, if there is some brand. So it's more of let's say a qualitative review from one person. It's usually me as designer doing the compliance check on the design, and if there are questions on the development of or like implementation of the component, that's more our tech lead that does a check on the application. But more often than not, it's more of a really like a visual check that the application that has been built, and at least when the core components are used, if they have been used correctly, or if something has been hacked without reasons and stuff like that. So
Do
that
you,
that is more of the compliance check.
Mhm. Do you also need to have some kind of legal checks? Because you're telco and probably there are a lot of stuff that needs to be legally approved.
Yeah. We do have a legal department and people in legal that help with that. So yeah, when the teams have to do a legal check, we have people that do that.
Mhm.
Same for accessibility. Like we have accessibility experts that are there exactly for that to check and review accessibility for the different applications.
Do you use any kind of automation or AI tools for this kind of stuff? Um,
Um, currently, currently not. I mean, I personally use it for research, accessibility guidance, token naming, documentation, UI generation, but not yet as a automation tool. Um, our brand department is actually looking into image generation tool to generate assets, which is coming along quite well, for what I saw. And yeah, but in general, I think there is great potential for AI to plug into the system and help people, build faster, especially in like discovery phase, building actual UIs and discovering maybe patterns across the different products you have. Like we talked about before about audits, that could be a great tool to integrate if you have the chance to let a AI run amok along your digital products and spotting what are common components that are used across your organization, pull them in and then iterate. But definitely, I think the synergies between design systems and AI can be extremely cool. I was in a call a couple of weeks ago with the CEO of Design Days. It's one of those tools that connects with the design system and generates UI, and they do generate them in HTML. So um, I think that's a very exciting automation type of tool, because then designers could really work with the technology rather than drawing things in Figma. They could actually build HTML um, or whatever technology that you have with the help of AI. And AI can help generating, discovering ideas if plugged in the design system, because they might have information about your company, plus they have the structure of your design system, and that can help, like, instead of like spending a lot of time moving pixels in Figma, you can actually generate a lot of ideas very, very fast.
yeah, and it's also more beneficial because you actually see how you can interact with this component. It's not just statically seeing there and maybe moving pixels like you said. Yeah.
Exactly. I think that would also bring like designers and developers much closer to each other, like which design systems already do, but there is still a lot of issues in the handover processes. People focus a lot on how things look in Figma and the pixel perfect artboard, but in the end, what users interact with is with the code that the developers do. So if you can bridge that gap, I think is always gonna be like it's gonna be positive in general, and they speed up also the working flow in this sense.
Yeah, there's a lot of potential. And also, I mean, when we started talking, we mentioned design audit. there is also a lot of work put here, and the screens change so fast that you would need to go back constantly to have the whole picture, what's going on, and also what's the user flow, how it's updated, and if AI could help doing this, or maybe just the screenshots, and inform you how your component was changed. Did you check the user flow or the screens with this? This could be also
Yeah,
helpful. But yeah,
yeah.
I think it's like a few years from this stage, but yeah,
Yeah,
we're getting there.
yeah. I think some teams already built in-house plugins. I think I saw a talk of Cynthia Romero at Pinterest. Like, I think she showed like a plugin that they built at Pinterest to help designers with the components in Figma. So there was like a link between the Figma file and the design system, so you could get like flags or checks
Yeah,
if the
linking.
component was
Yeah,
like a linking process.
yeah, that's also
Um,
helpful.
yeah,
You can get
and
a
I think also it's
feedback
good.
even for the smallest
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah. But I think what's more exciting is really that you really build with the technology, and then you can try it and interact with it, because topics like responsiveness is usually a big issue for designers in Figma, because Figma is quite restricted in what it allows you to do with responsiveness. And when you want to try to um, build something responsive in Figma, it's a lot of work, which maybe a developer can do much faster, but because of resources, you cannot go bother a developer to build something quick in HTML. Um, so yeah, being able to give a developer like some code, and you being able to try it, interact with it together with the developer, I think it can be very, very powerful as a workflow.
Yeah, any time you are connected with developers, even getting the JSON from them automatically give you more power in Figma. But if you're not connected with them directly, then you're far away and probably you don't understand the whole aspect. You live in Figma and that's it.
Yeah, that is definitely a problem I see a lot of times. And then people complain when what it's released is not the same as what it was designed. But that's exactly where these gaps are, because and for example, in places where you have like a waterfall flow, where you have designers that draw something and then those things are given to the developers to build, that's exactly where you see these issues, because you don't have this working together. It's more like you draw something and then someone will build it, and um, you lack that collaboration and that synergy between the two disciplines. And that often happens, that developers just build whatever, and you maybe are not happy as a designer. And that is often, especially both the tools, but and the processes, of course, I think,
Mm.
when you split the two disciplines.
Yeah, I also feel that then developers don't have the right say, to actually share their opinion about the component or the interactions. It's just like build
Yeah,
this and shut up, This is what.
yeah, and that is a waterfall mindset. I think that's also something that Dan Moll talks about in his book, that he sees maybe the need to not call designers and developers anymore, to just say web designers, and everybody's a web designer. Because I think developers, they they provide extremely useful feedback, and oftentimes there is the idea that they should not give feedback on something that is design related, but I completely disagree. I think it should be a collaborative effort, and developers have a very good understanding of information architecture, so they can give designers very insightful feedbacks on the designs of the component, or even of the application in general. They know the technology better. So yeah, I definitely see these two disciplines should work very close. But yeah, sometimes it's not possible, depending on how teams are structured, how the culture of the company is. Those are challenges that some companies have, of course.
Yeah,
Not easy.
if you're lucky enough, you work in pairs and then everything's
Yeah.
easier. Are you also tracking your design system?
Um, So the whole telemetry of the design system, it's been a topic for a long time. Sadly, we never had like too much time and resources to build like deep telemetry in the design system to be able to measure the things we would like to. I mean, of course, we use the Figma analytics for Figma and try to get some information through that. Um, and yeah, some departments they check um, adoption metrics in their team by looking at the number of components that are used in each view. But yeah, that is something that definitely um, it would be a good thing to work more on. But it's more from about resources and time.
Yeah, and also how much sense it makes since you're spread through so many initiatives.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That is true. But yeah, it's a topic that has been talked to. But yeah, because of changes in team and management, we never had time and resources to um, to work on because it's quite of a big it's a big topic and you need you definitely need time and resources.
Mm. If you could go back and change one decision, what would it be? And how would it affect, everything that happened so far?
Hmm. Um, well, so internally we talked for years about having an onboarding process for designers and some education practices around design systems. I know some companies that they have like an onboarding process where new designers work inside the design system team for a couple of months, or other companies they offer video tutorials explaining how design system works. Um, but yeah, these type of topics were deprioritized because of team size and resources. But I would say that was probably a mistake to deprioritize this because yeah, I think I had always like the wrong assumption that like, everybody reads and learns about the latest trends and keep up to date with how other companies work. But yeah, like I said before, I think product design is more immature in Europe than in the US, and a lot of companies are focused on processes and outputs rather than strategic outcomes when it comes to design. So I would focus more on getting a UX strategy and then link the desired outcomes with the design system as a way to translate the strategy into a design language that will help them team deliver those outcomes. If I
Yeah.
go back, yes.
Yeah, that's a smart one. Onboarding is also a huge initiative, and if you miss this opportunity, then again, people come to your company and then they just start working what they learned before, so.
Yeah, exactly. And especially when you have a lot of people coming from the more like a graphic designer background, that's where you notice the difference because it's like I said before, it's a new way of working and it requires it's a different mindset that you have when you build. So it's less about drawing, it's more about building.
Yeah, and understanding the whole situation, the flows, how it
Yeah.
connects. And in the start, you mentioned that you have two interns. Um, how can they learn from how you work? Do you have special, let's say, one-on-ones with them, or can they observe you when you have
Yeah.
meetings?
Yeah. I mean, we do have a lot of interns program at Swisscom, which is a quite cool initiative that the company has. In all departments, there's many interns opportunities, so young people can come and do internships. So we had often interns in the last few years. In the first years, we didn't have in the design system team because we were always like, "Hey, we are too busy. We don't have time to have someone for a few months." But then we started having an intern to help, mostly on the Figma side. But I think it was great experience for them. So basically, they were there during the design phase. Like they were basically, I was mentoring them. and they were helping me with Figma components, and I was explaining them how to build them, and documentation. It's a bit more hard, but they had the chance to basically see uh, how a component is built, what kind of like research goes into that, and yeah, I'm quite excited because I've noticed how interns tend to like they know Figma very well, surprisingly well. I think this is the reason because they are young, so they still follow all the releases. They do, they kind of know all the new features of Figma, and they're quite proficient in building components. So it was definitely great to mentor some of them and show them how how we work in Figma, how to build those components, and because a lot of people maybe learn Figma more of as like a drawing tool, but when you build a component and you have to learn like all the nitty-gritty things like auto layout, like nested instances, variables, then you have to think more of how the component is systematically built rather than drawn.
Mm.
And so I think yeah, for them it's definitely a cool thing when they have to then maybe work in a company that uses a design system and they need to start working with it.
Is this part of the education that they have, or can they apply for internship before they apply for the real job? Because I know that Switzerland has a lot of interns, I mean, internship
Yeah.
beside the education.
Yeah, there is different types of internship that people can do, and I don't know all of them, but some like most people, most young people that come through internship, they still go to school, so
Mm.
they have like 3 days work, and then they go to school. Then there are like internship programs where they basically are fully working for 6 months, 12 months. There are times where they come to work at the end of their studies to work on a project. So they have basically a final project they have to work on. So they come for those 6 months with and we have to give them a project to do that they can then that they can then show at school and be graded on it. So there is all these different type of programs. It's like either hybrid, you work and then you go to school at the same time, and then other internships where it's a bit more long term, like I said, maybe 12 months, 1 year and a half, where people can do like certain amount of time before maybe going to do a master program or actually getting a full-time job. That's there's different types of internship.
I mean, it's a great, for everyone learning, coming
Yeah.
to Swisscom and having a mentor like yourself. What could be better? You can come into any company and just start working on any initiative, not just design system, but also product design, because you know all the things that affect the work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I think like you said, it's kind of like a mentorship program. And I think having mentors is always invaluable at any stage of your career, not just when you're starting out. So yeah, that definitely gives that opportunity.
So we can use this mentorship to question who affects your work, or where do you find inspiration, or books or resources. Would you recommend something that our listeners could also learn something?
Yeah, I mean, lot of the resources that I use is like from conferences to books, podcasts like yours, the Slack channels that there are out there about design systems. I talk a lot to design system leads. Like I just reached out on LinkedIn. One very influential resource that I read was like from the design system maturity model from Ben Callahan, that where he talks about culture, because like company culture was off my radar when I started working in this space. He has like a great a great weekly call called The Question, where many other design system practitioners participate. And yeah, basically many different resources. I think on the internet you find a lot of good resources, like your website is great, and podcasts there is more and more, which is great. And yeah, conferences, like I mentioned, it's a great place to get inspired by other speakers, then maybe reaching out and having like one-on-one talks. So those are like the type of resources that you really seek to learn. And yeah, I'm still like learning a lot every week through contacts that I have. It's always it's a very new space, and there is a lot of different perspectives and people learning design systems in different way because they work in different countries, companies, industries. So it's definitely a place where, yeah, you need to you can reach out and find a lot of good insights.
Yeah, and it's also very exciting. I mean, it's not a boring job, you always have to learn something new, you cannot sleep. And not just that perspective changes, also technology changes, and then you have to implement this.
Absolutely.
And it's fun,
Yeah.
small world that you also met Alexander from Agoda, our first.
Alex. Yeah. Yeah, no, that was cool. Like, yeah, like I said, because the community is quite small. Yeah, had the chance to when I was in Bangkok in January, met up with Alex van Den from Agoda, and yeah, we had like a lot of cool discussions, and it was really cool.
Yeah,
So yeah, this is like, I think the community is very open um
to
to
share.
like, get in touch and share. Yeah.
Yeah, which is quite untypical, I feel. I mean, you can really learn if you reach out, you can get so many people getting excited about design system and sharing their knowledge.
Yeah, true that.
Um, what's one thing you wish more people would understand about design systems?
Mm. Um, well, I would say the fact that they are a new way of working um, for building software scales, especially like in big organization. Um, and I think a lot of people still don't understand that the design system is not like a component library where you drag and drop components. I think the components are not the system, but the interconnections between the components are the systems. And the interconnections are made of like your design decisions in forms of like code, variables, guidelines, templates, and the underlying UX strategy of the company as well. And that is basically what makes it so that when used effectively, that allows designers to work together with developers and build software rather than drawing interfaces on canvas. And yeah, maybe something I also thought is a bit of a controversial take. I mean, it's something that I've just been thinking about lately. Maybe it's a spicy take, I don't know. Um, but I also started thinking if design systems should be maybe a product tool that supports the UX strategy outcome of the company and not necessarily the design outputs of single teams. Um, because teams can use the design system to produce outputs in line with the UX strategy, but if your system focuses on too many single team wishes, then you might lose the connection with the overall vision of the strategy of the company. So kind of like the brand corporate identity and brand guidelines, they should guide the team in how to build digital products for companies at scale, um, and needs to be supported, integrated in the company culture. Otherwise, it's like giving a chess game to people that want to play checkers. So I think that is something I've been thinking about lately, to to frame design systems maybe in that way as well.
Yeah, it's especially bad. I mean, if like in your case, you have a lot of initiatives and then design system can get pretty basic, really basic design, clear design, and it doesn't have any flavor or, the juicy part of the brand. So in this case,
Yeah.
of course, it would help a lot that design system has also the culture, the branding guidelines, everything connected, and then you can really, know, okay, this is Swisscom and not something else.
Yeah, totally.
Um, but what would you say it's overrated or underrated when we're talking about design systems?
Overrated, probably the buzzwords of consistency, accessibility, efficiencies, that they're not what a design system can guarantee, or even help if the UX maturity is low in the company, or if there is no UX strategy. Um, and I think design systems, and this is something that Ben taught me, like they, when adopted in a company, they tend to expose low design maturity and lack of leadership in product strategy. And yeah, for regarding underrated, I would say the fact that system designers need a different skill set than product designers. I think that's one thing that is often underrated, and I think that's also the reason why federated models tend to fail. And Nathan Curtis wrote about this in an article not so long ago, because I think federated community models, they tend to end up becoming kind of like a design by committee, where people don't have the skills to apply system thinking to certain problems. And then they tend to see the design system as a component library where all wished components and variants should be included. And if you do that, then you bloat the library, you reduce the quality, and you make the maintenance harder long term.
Mm.
So yeah, I think this is the big underrated aspect. Like,
Mm. Yeah, I just heard one suggestion that one guy had. He was a product manager. Like, yeah, let's make a component and put a poll on Slack, for everyone to
yeah,
vote what's the best one. And I was like, this is not it. We cannot do that because people will not have any context. They will not come back later on, and you will just take that number and take it for granted that this is the best component.
yeah, yeah, and that is the design by committee like
Yeah.
type of mentality that I mean, imagine what would happen if the brand team would do that. Like, asking the whole company, in which kind of brand direction do you want to go, and what will be the outcome?
Yeah. I mean, it's like, do you like red or orange? It's very subjective.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, if you would want to give an advice, for all the listeners or newbies or people that want to work in design system, what would that be?
Um, Probably that work specifically for design systems. Do you mean?
Yeah, or just advice, how to start in the design.
Yeah. Um, well, I would say, well, in general, not only for design systems, but like basically read and keep learning, in order to like, you know, not stagnate in your journey, in your domain of expertise, because technology changes very rapidly. So yeah, having a learning mindset, basically, I would say is what I would recommend. It keeps you humble and allows you to adopt new technology and new ways of working. And yeah, for people that are young, I think that's an opportunity because yeah, most people tend to stagnate, I would say, in their career at some point. So when you're young, then that means there's great opportunity for you if you stay in that hungry learning mode
And apply to internship to Swiss.
and apply to internship. Yes.
So, if you would have a chance to invite someone for a coffee chat in any space, design system, whatever, who would that be?
Well, if he will still be alive, Steve Jobs, when it comes to design in general, yeah, I I was like maybe still too young when he was giving interviews, but I've been watching a lot of his older stuff, and I'm often surprised the insights he has when he talks about like company and design. So definitely him. For people that are still alive, I would say Jacob Nielsen. I would love to pick his brain on and view on design systems in general and the whole world of UX. Since I did my master in Denmark, so his name was mentioned often during my studies. So yeah, Jacob definitely like a person I would love to pick his brain on the topic.
Yeah, I love your choice. But what do you do when you're not in design systems? When you're not in front of the computer?
Yeah, well, when I'm not in front of my computer, I'm still in front of a computer or a screen oftentimes. But now, well, in general, I like to read like books, articles, and learn from listening to podcasts, watching documentaries, talking to mentors. Otherwise, like travel. I love to travel. I love video games since forever. Work out and spend time with friends. And also something since some years I started developing a bit of a keen interest in markets and investing. So I like to follow business news, crypto, general financial stuff. It's
Okay.
quite an interesting industry as well.
Yeah. Also moving so fast, so
Yeah, yeah.
to be on it. So, what's your favorite video game?
I will have go with Zelda Ocarina of Time. It was the it's an old game, but might be the one that I loved the most.
Oh, nice.
For
I'm
those
not.
who don't know, like it used to be on the Nintendo 64 back in the late 90s.
Okay. But
So it's quite
what
economic.
about some latest game?
Oh, some latest games. I really loved Elden Ring. Um, it's this RPG from Software, which develops extremely hard video games. It's like their thing. They develop like almost impossible video games. And it has like a crazy well done world and universe. So that is like I like those games that are like story driven and have this world where you immerse yourself and you discover things and it's like really out of the box. So I would go for Elden Ring for more recent ones.
Oh, nice. I will check it out. I mean, I'm not a gamer, but it sounds interesting.
Yep.
What about the last question? Is there a documentary that you would recommend or that you saw it and you were really inspired?
Um, yeah, there is many. The well, it's not gonna be about design. There's just the first one that popped in my mind was Princess of the Yen. It's about like it's about economics and the financial system. Talking about like Japan in the last 30 years.
Great. I mean,
Yeah,
it doesn't have to be connected with
it doesn't
design.
have to be design.
I actually think that as designers, we should always think very broad, that
Mm,
get knowledge from all the industries and then you can apply it in a much better and more effective way.
yeah, yeah, true. Yeah, I like to learn things also about other industries or topics. It's always cool.
Thanks so much, Robin. You've been so helpful and you shared so many great insights. Really excited to have you here and shout out to Alex because I saved your name in my sales navigator. I forgot about it, but then when I saw the post on LinkedIn that you were there, I was like, of course, I wanted to invite you as well to the podcast. So great. Thanks.
Hey, Romina, I have to thank you very much for having me. It's been an honor and a pleasure.